So today I thought it would be a good idea to build a new keyboard. This is the Atreus keyboard kit that I bought from Atreus. You could just search Google for Atreus. So here's the switches and the keycaps. Looks like some diodes, the electronics, and looks like a USB cable in here. Here are the directions. And I looked at this a little bit. Looks pretty good. Pretty detailed. Actually looks really nice. And this was actually wrapped in some bubble wrap, I think. I don't remember. But the circuit board's in there. And here are the laser cut pieces of wood. And looks pretty decent. I can't really tell what kind of wood this is. Feels it's definitely a plywood of some kind. Not really sure, but oh, I think there's also some nuts and bolts in the other bag too. In that bag, came with a couple pieces of sandpaper, some 220 and some 1500, and came with this nice letter too. Like, you know, telling you a little bit about it. And then it looks like it might come pre-programmed with a QWERTY layout, and I forgot to ask him to make it Dvorak, so I'm going to have to probably figure that out later. But I'll show you guys all of that, and that's it. That's all that was in there. So let's get started with the sanding. Alright, so the instructions tell you what to do. It says to start with the more abrasive sandpaper, which would be the 220 in this case, and then to sand all the surfaces that might be touched, which would be the very top surface and the bottom surface. And then he also suggested that if you don't like the burnt look of the wood, you can also sand that down as well. And you can sand down any other surfaces if you want to. I don't really like the these particular nuts and bolts. I was thinking I might get some black ones. But these certainly are functional. Okay, so I got the pieces apart. So these are pretty thin. You can see. This one's a little thicker. And so, yeah, see, these pieces are going to have to be sanded independently. And then there's the circuit board. It's looking pretty nice. I did have to cheat a little bit on this little section. I didn't want to go side to side and snag it and break it off, so I did cheat and I went that direction. I just very lightly went over it. Looks pretty good once you get all the burn marks off. And then on these edges too, you kind of have to be careful. So that's looking pretty good. Got all the burn marks off pretty much, I think. I might go back over it one more time. With this type of plywood, you have to be careful not to sand too much because you'll get down into the center layer and you don't want to get down into there. So I think I might just switch to the fine grit at this point and touch it up. I'm going to try to get some of this out of here too. There's some sawdust in these crevices, but I like how it's dark in the crevices there. I just need to clean the sawdust out of there. And I'm not going to sand on the interior area here. Looks kind of cool dark in there anyway. But I do want to sand the outside off. And I don't know, I mean, I think I might wait and put it back together before I sand this, but I'm going to try working on it a little bit more. It's kind of hard to hold on to this because it's not very thick, so it's hard to get pressure on it. But that's looking pretty good. So yeah, I'll just keep working on that. But I went ahead and skipped this piece for a minute to work on this one. And I've got this sanded down pretty well with the 220, and probably go back over, yeah, I'll be going back over with the 1500, but working on the edges right now. And I just noticed that this saves quite a bit of time, just actually putting the paper on the table, just kind of going back and forth like that. Seems to work pretty good, actually. So I just wanted to share that with you. And I'm going to go ahead and put these pieces back together. Let's go on here like this. So I think it's like that. Alright, cleaned off all the sawdust, and now I just need to clean these pieces to make sure I got all the sawdust off. I'm going to use this tack cloth. So I thought I would test out the stain on an interior side. This is going to be the bottom surface. So I thought I would just test it out to see if I like how it looks. So I'm just going to put a little mark on here. I'm going to go ahead and use it. No guts, no glory. So this will be my last coat of lacquer. I've already put on about 10 coats. I've done both sides of the wood, and I've also tried to make sure that I got all of the edges too, as well as the top and bottom surfaces. Basic lacquer. You want to do really light coats. You don't want any goobers or anything like that. Then I usually go back through and just make sure that I get those edges. Okay, next I want to sand down the lacquer just a little bit. And so I was going to test it on this piece first just to see how it feels. This feels really rough. I think part of it is because I probably didn't really sand it very well since it was just going on the inside. So I'm using the really fine grit, 1500. Oh my gosh, that is so smooth. Alright, now we can set this aside and get to work on the electronics. Now, I read the instructions for this part. Next step is the diodes. And it actually doesn't specify whether the diodes should go on the top part of the circuit board or the bottom. The photo shows that they should go on the bottom. Figure I'll just twist them like that so they stay in place. Okay, I got about half of them inserted, and I just wanted to double check, make sure I had them all in the right orientation. Now, I'm going to pull on it to make sure it's laying flat on the bottom side, and then I'm going to line up the solder there to the hole. You know, technically these leads should be trimmed prior to soldering. I think I see why they say to do 5 at a time. I think it would be easier to do like one strip at a time, like these 5, and then these 5, and these 5, and then these 5. I think it's why they say to do 5 at a time, because it's hard to get into the center ones with all the prongs sticking up everywhere. That side of the circuit board, I believe, is completed. Okay, all the diodes are completed, and I double checked to make sure they're all in the correct orientation. Now it's time to do the controller. It suggests to fill solder into each of the 4 corners here, and then to put the lead in there. So fill it with solder, and then take your lead. Try to make it as straight up and down as possible, it said. And then heat it up, put it in there. I'm bending it to make it a little easier, I think. Just double check and make sure that that goes on there okay. Alright. Alright, I kind of got into this and I forgot to record some video, but got the circuit board soldered on, or the microcontroller. And the directions said to only use pins, or to only drive through pins like on one side, and then solder those in place, and then to do the other side. But I just soldered the diode legs on all of the pins and then put it in. And I'm not sure why they recommend doing it the other way. I think perhaps it's because I don't know actually. I mean, but it was kind of difficult to situate the microcontroller on top of all those pins at the same time. But they were all different lengths because I had trimmed them off because I bent them. And so it was actually pretty easy to get them on there. Next we need to do is solder the switches onto the circuit board. And I think the directions say to start with the four corners, and assembling it in this fashion actually makes sense to do it that way. So let's go ahead and put 4 keys in, because it'll get it all aligned, you know. Alright, so there's the 4. Okay, those all lined up pretty well. Okay. Let's do the same thing for this one. All right. I wonder if I should secure it. Alright, so the keyboard is done. Of course, it's going to require some getting used to. Okay, let's see. Kind of weird, you know, the way that they're lined up. My fingers are used to, you know, keys being in the wrong place. Having them in the right place is gonna take some getting used to, but that's pretty neat. These keys actually type pretty well. These are the Matthias keys. They seem to work pretty well. Anyway, I tested all the keys. All the keys are working, and turned out pretty good, I think. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.